This is Coda Radio, episode 205 for May 16th, 2016. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show taking a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. This episode is brought to you by our two fine sponsors, DigitalOcean and Linux Academy. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. There it is. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week, perched atop his broadcast mountain on the East Coast, hunkered down with his microphone, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hello, Michael!
Guten Morgen, or afternoon.
Hello, guten afternoon. I don't know what the. You know, that's interesting. As long as I've known that saying, I've never known what good evening is or good afternoon. I only know good morning in German.
well, good night is guten Nacht, right?
Is it? Or maybe it's like Hawaii, where aloha. What is it? Aloha could be
Aloha,
goodbye.
Hello. Or goodbye,
yeah, maybe it's Guten Tag. Oh, I did know that.
Guten Tag. Good day.
Oh, well, that's not what we're gathered here to talk about today on the Coda Radio program, Mr. Dominic. I teased in our live stream tweet that once we go through some very interesting hoopla, I think you might just think we have a time machine after you listen to this week's episode. I'm not. I mean, I'm not saying that on the record. I'm gonna have all that edited out. But I'm just saying, time machine.
Time machine. What a great backup solution.
Before we get into the hoopla, no, yeah. You know where the one place you don't need to go. Like, so you know how Apple got a hard time for a long time for their skeuomorphic design.
Which I actually liked, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, it made sense. All of a sudden, you had these high DPI displays. It made sense to sort of lavish it up a little bit, put the nice lacquer on there. But the one place where it just never made sense was that freaking space animation for Time Machine. And you think it's good and solid until you're on like an old Mac. Like, say you go to a client that has a bunch of old Macs that just run like Photoshop 6 or something, and they're on like an earlier, like one of the first iterations or second iterations of Mac OS that had Time Machine. Those machines they can't even run that animation properly. Like later on, Apple came up with some sort of fallback system, but early on, it was just you were in like a 5 frame per second backup UI. It was so awful.
Yeah,
bad software design right there.
I mean, we don't need to talk about backup solutions, but
no, we don't.
I went for Crash Plan and really never looked back.
No, good for you. Yeah, sure. Hey, really briefly, before we move into the hoopla, I came across Aaron's email that he sent in for ages ago, and it was about RSI. I got a few comments about RSI, and he had a whole bunch of different stuff that he's tried. But one thing that he really liked was the Happy Hacking Keyboard Professional 2. It's a Japanese product, hence the name. He likes that it's a minimalistic key layout that keeps unnecessary movement. Also, some people recommended remapping like some of my keys, like Control to caps locks and stuff like that. And some people also recommended some great stretches and things like that. So I just wanted to say thank you to people who had contacted me. And the RSI is still kind of crappy. It's kind of getting me down because it's been going on for a few weeks now, and I just feel like on top of being behind on work and being behind on sleep, now my body's not keeping up. It's been kind of a downer for me, actually.
I was having major like RSI pain like end of 2013, beginning of 2014. And what I found for me was stop working on your laptop as a laptop.
Yeah, dude. Boy, that's the thing. I have stopped working, and thankfully, not all by choice. I've stopped working on, not thankfully, but I stopped working on my laptop when my PCI SSD died on me, but I have not picked up another laptop or fixed it in the meantime, because that's really when it hurts, is that keyboard.
Well, they are even the good laptop keyboards, like I know System 76 aren't bad, the MacBook Pro, not the crazy one, and the MacBook One or whatever they call it.
Yeah, the bigger one. The bigger one.
The bigger ones are better, but they're nothing compared to a mechanical keyboard.
Yeah.
You know, I and we talked about it last week, I think. I'm particular to the DOS keyboard line.
Yeah.
But in fact, look, just give it a listen real quick. Oh, yeah.
It's gorgeous.
I
have been trying to walk more, Jed. So Jed mentions I need to do more exercise and sleep. I am trying to do the sleep thing. I'm trying to track my sleep again and get a handle on that. But it's difficult because family members are sick and
you want to talk to me about not sleeping?
Oh, geez. Really? Has it been rough?
It's like some strange Chinese torture.
Yeah. Is every 2 hours the baby wakes up?
You know, it's not that he wakes up every 2 hours. It's that he won't go to sleep until 2 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And he begins his night at 2 a.m. and I begin my day at like 6.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So even if he wakes up once, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, that is really, especially, and it doesn't really get much better because life goes on, and like right now, Dylan is sick, and so he was at my place Saturday night, and he was pretty much up a good chunk of the night. He got some solid sleep in there, but for most of the night, I think it was not really anything very restful. I mean, it's just. Yeah, it wears you out after a while. It's kind of a lot. It feels like a lot of headwinds sometimes. I feel like I want to sit down and do my work, and I want to focus on my projects, but I'm up against, just all different kinds of headwinds that are stressors on life.
Oh, of course. I mean, and it's obviously not when kids are sick, it's not their fault. I mean, it's not like you can be upset about it. But I have a bad habit now. Is I get to my office and I just sit and have coffee for like 30 minutes because it's silent here, right? I'm here before anybody else, and it's like, which is not good because, for me, when I don't sleep enough, I used to be a champion of all-nighters. Now, if I don't get enough sleep, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it affects my job performance pretty directly because the two things I really notice is it affects how I speak, like the way I speak. It's slower. It's not as clear. I don't like it as much. And the other thing I notice is sometimes my mind just isn't moving as fast as it needs to be moving to be not just hosting the show, but also switching the show and checking the chat room and lining up the next shot for the camera, and all that stuff requires that cognitively I need to be firing pretty much on all cylinders. And when I'm going on like 5 or 6 days of pretty rough sleep. It's like, whew, just kind of want to just call a vacation. But, at the same time, honestly, there are a few things that are kind of exciting. Like looking just at our lineup today, Google I.O. is this week, Wednesday. And I actually think this is going to be a super kick-ass I.O.
I do not.
I can't wait to talk about that with you.
but let's do the news first.
Okay, so this is the big one, I think, for our community. Saw a lot of talk about this on Reddit, too. GitHub is introducing private unlimited repositories.
Yes, and if they had done this years ago, I would be on GitHub.
I remember we talked a lot about this, actually. So a personal account is $7 a month. An organization, $9 a user, $25 a month for your first 5 users.
Yeah, you really want the organization account if you're... So let's be clear, though, right? A lot of people correctly pointed out to me when I was all happy about this. This is, for the vast majority of users, a straight price increase.
Well, so if I look at this, so if you're for $7 a month, no matter what you're paying for, your plan now includes as many repositories as you need. Now, was there a lower price point below 7 before that? And here's the other thing, Mike.
No, I see. So I don't know much about the personal plans. I'll be honest. When my old company, when we used
looking at
GitHub,
the business plans, it looks like this might be.
It's a big increase.
Yeah.
So the deal was before with both the business and the personal plans. It was for the business like $25 a month or whatever, and you would get up to, I think it was like 5 repos, but you could have unlimited contributors. And GitHub makes no distinction between, me sending you a GitHub invite to your personal email and me giving you an email at Buccaneer and saying this is your email. Which is one of the reasons I'm not sure that I love GitHub. Because there's an element of like control there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And maybe you don't want everything to be public because it also shows your organizations publicly. But I could see for a lot of people that maybe doesn't matter. What ended up happening, though, if you're a startup with one product, you just have one big repo with a bunch of collaborators, that's an awesome deal. If you're a shop who does a lot of little projects for people where every client has like 3 repos, you quickly hit that cap. I mean, we got to the point at Fingertip where we were paying like $300 a month to GitHub.
Yep, I remember talking about that. And that is
we were going to have to jump up to I think we're actually at 5. I think we're going to have to jump to like 800. And we just, the decision was made to move to GitLab at the time. In starting Buccaneer, made a different decision. We're very tied into the Atlassian toolchain, Jira, and in fact, today we just got their new product, Jira Project, for project management.
Huh.
So their alternative to GitHub is Bitbucket, which does not charge you by the repo. for by the user.
So as that kind of as an organization, as a business, it seems like an increase. But as an individual user who might just want to be like I don't want to be stereotypical, but let's say somebody who's on the internet that wants to just get involved in a whole bunch of open source projects, this seems like a really great price point for that person, for he or she that just really is going to have her hands in a lot of different things. Why not? And now there's a very straightforward price point, $7.
Well, or if you're a company that doesn't have that many repos, right? You're a product startup. But the question is, are you going to scale headcount or repos? If you're a shop,
both, right? I mean, usually.
Well, if you're a shop, you're scaling repos probably faster than you're scaling headcount, because a lot of the time the client will ask, don't delete my repo, just keep it.
That's true.
Right, and now you're using Bitbucket or GitHub as a backup. Having said
or sometimes you want to just keep it around. Really, I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes it's advantageous to just keep it, and there's a lot of people that just keep things around like that.
I think this is great. I also think we should call a spade, and it is effectively a price increase on development shops. I mean, it's actually a price increase on most users.
You can't use private repos with open source projects. That's true.
Yeah,
I guess I was thinking of somebody who would maybe just want to have a bunch of projects. I wasn't necessarily meaning involved with other projects.
Right. If you're an individual person, you want to have a bunch of private repos. Yeah. This is awesome for you.
But I guess I was hoping it would be. Yeah, never mind. It just wouldn't. I guess you're right. It kind of is an increase for businesses mostly.
Well, let me.
I'm sitting here trying to split the difference and come up with the positive side, and I'm losing ground.
Well, think about this super common case, right? You're a dev shop and you get overwhelmed. You might subcontract out to some individual 99 guy for like 3 weeks just to avoid falling behind. Before, that had no bearing on your GitHub account. Now it probably will, right? Yeah. Assuming your internal development team is greater than 5 people. Also, people who they consider anyone with repo access a developer, not anyone committing code, which is a significant difference. So if you have testers that have access because you're using GitHub's project management solution for issue tracking, they count. You have to pay. Having said that, if you're using GitHub's project management solution and you are that big, I would definitely recommend you look at Jira. It's significantly better. But
I was just gonna mention really quickly too that they're being pretty good guy about the change. One of the facts
they're giving you a year, right? They said they won't. Yeah.
They say, well, GitHub forced me to move to per user pricing after 12 months. Note this time we're not enforcing a timeline to move. I am an existing organization customer and prefer the per repository plans. Can I remain on my current plan? Yes. You can choose to continue paying based on the number of repositories you use.
I don't. I definitely see the attraction in using GitHub for your source control hosting, but I would challenge, and maybe their tools have gotten better. It's been over a year and a half since I really used their project management tools. We pretty quickly back in the day had to move away from GitHub for issue tracking. It's just not quite as organized. And I would even argue it's not the best tool for non-technical people. But
I will say, if you let's just elephant in the room. Let's just say it. Go spin up your own solution if you can. If that's within your means, DigitalOcean.com. It's a sponsor right here on the Coder Radio program. GitLab and DigitalOcean go together like peanut butter and jam. Literally, they have a one click. Oh, well, yeah, it does kind of kick it off. One-click deployment of the image of. I think it's probably based on Ubuntu. I've never actually deployed it, but I would imagine Ubuntu.
It's Ubuntu 15.06.
Yeah. Okay. Or probably and they keep them updated too, so it could be later now. And then you click that deployment, and you have GitLab ready to go on a DigitalOcean droplet within seconds. Starts at $5 a month. You use the promo code CoderDigital, all lowercase, by the way, one word. You get a $10 credit. You could try it out. Just see if it works for you for 2 months for free. And I just wanted to mention the nice thing about this is if you set it all up and you realize you really screwed the pooch, and if you could do it all over again, you'd do it a lot better, but you don't want to have to go through the hassle of reloading GitLab and reloading because of the way the DigitalOcean deployment works, you hit the reset button on that droplet, it goes back to that base image with all of the software installed, all the repo setup that you need, all of the keys imported and signed that are required to talk to those repos securely. Everything's set right for you when you hit that reset button, and then you just rebuild. You start with a clean slate. I love that because it makes bouncing back super fast. It also makes testing really fast too. DigitalOcean is great. Yeah.
It's a great solution to use DO for this too. If you have, let's say for one customer, you have legal compliance issues, meaning maybe they're in the medical space and you can't put their repo on GitHub or Bitbucket. This is a reason to have a GitLab instance running. Obviously, you have to secure the server.
Yeah, and they have data centers in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Germany. So you could probably find one that works great for you. And they have a great interface to manage all of it and a really slick API that we've talked about before, how we use their API now to manage some of our droplets via bots. And it's the way of the future. It's really cool. DigitalOcean.com. Just use that promo code CoderDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Coder Radio program. That just seemed like a too obvious spot. Like that's an obvious solution for a lot of people, especially in our audience.
It is actually the solution that Buccaneer was started with. We ended up moving only because we are using Atlassian for everything else. And literally, source control is free.
Yeah, so. I think with each tool you decide to roll your own infrastructure, you really have to just consider, is there a hosted solution that is secure, meets our needs, and is reasonable priced, because you're opting now to manage something else. So you have to make sure it's the right thing for you. And
it's who do I trust more, right? Who's more likely to make a mistake, me or Atlassian?
Right, that's a good question.
That's really what it comes down to.
And what is, there's a lot of factors too, like what's the strategy tax, what's their, et cetera, what's their long-term goals? And, you've made that assessment with GitHub and been, maybe not for me. And I think that's a personal choice for each person they make for each major tool they have to implement.
Honestly, one of my main concerns with GitHub was I didn't feel like they were making enough money, even though I was paying a lot.
Azure says that he can't store his EU client's code on GitHub, so he uses a DigitalOcean droplet.
Yeah, that HIPAA compliance in the United States, you really shouldn't be hosting that on GitHub.
I find it too. Just every single time I have opted to roll out something that JB is now hosting instead of going to a third party, and we just did a whole slew of it. We just spun up like 3 new servers in the last few weeks. I have to really analyze that decision each time and say, okay, if this thing's going to take X amount of our time now, is that worth the time and the value that maybe we could just get from something that's hosted? And each time you make that decision, I think you learn a little bit too. So you can't be too hard on yourself. Like if the Atlassian thing doesn't work out 6 months down the road, maybe GitHub's offerings looks a little better. It's not being wishy-washy to change. It's just reassessing your needs and making.
And I would argue, if you're going to go the cloud solution way, having multiple ones is probably a great redundancy strategy.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good to keep your toes wet in the other pond too, just so you kind of have an idea what they're working on.
Well, we do have a GitHub organization account that we use.
Yeah, so you get a little idea. Yeah,
yeah,
there you go.
And all of our open source stuff is actually on GitHub, not Bitbucket. But
this
boom.
is CNN breaking.
Holy smokes! I never thought I'd be saying this headline on the Coder Radio program. Apple's app review times are actually shortening?
Yes. So, okay.
Down to 2 days for iOS, down to 1 day for the Mac App Store.
That's because no one's submitting apps to the Mac App Store. So this is a rumor. It's not officially confirmed, but the word on the street, to use the horrible pun, is that Apple is so focused on services now, they want to get apps in quicker, less pain, so this is how they're doing it. I would bet you any amount of money that they have some sort of automated review thing, just like Google does, right? So the human intervention's not as heavy as it used to be. I don't know. I'm doing some submissions very shortly, so I would like to see that it
You'll
goes
do a
through
little
in 48
test
hours.
case, huh?
Yeah. Because my Mac app review times used to be about a month. So
yeah, I remember. That was
great to get that not to be a month.
Can we just? I know this is not what we're here to talk about today, but okay. Before I go any further, I will grant you. Oh, you bastards! Get out of there! Get that little there. Oh, there we go. So I have a little chart up on the screen that shows you the Apple's fiscal quarters from Q1 2013 to Q2 2016, and in this small slice of time, not compared to any other source of income, this shows you a very nice mostly progressive climb. I mean, it's better than how Microsoft's online services looked before they rejiggered the structure of the company. Okay, so I guess for example, they made $6 billion in Q1 2016, and they made $5.99 billion in Q2 2016. I get what they're doing here, right? They're changing the narrative. This is what. So you know how we always talk about how there's a lot of Apple coverage, a lot of Apple podcasts, a lot of Apple press. I think for the most time they're fairly on the nose with Apple. They can be a little forgiving, but this is where they get bamboozled. Is Apple is putting this narrative out now because they're trying to get Wall Street to pay attention to where they are growing. Because as you know, Apple's taking it in the pants right now as far as the stock market goes, because their last quarter came out and growth fell down through the floor. And Wall Street buys and sells based on growth, not the fact that they could buy and sell most countries just by their cash balance. That's not what Wall Street cares about. They care about growth. And so Apple is changing the narrative to get everybody to talk about growth. So the only place they're really, truly growing is services.
Okay, but isn't that what everybody else is doing?
I suppose. What I'm trying to point out is when you say everyone else, Apple is not Amazon. They are not Azure. They are not Rackspace. They are not Google Cloud Compute. They are a hardware company. And the services that they have are only there to back up and make those hardware products better. They are not like compute clusters you can go buy or SQL servers you can run up in the sky. They're iCloud storage and key value storage and IMAP and things like that. That's what iCloud is. And it's iTunes, if you lump the music downloads that they've been hosting on Akamai CDN for the past 15 years into services all of a sudden, and iTunes.
Okay, well, a couple things, right? iCloud is a basket that contains a lot of rotten, crappy
It's a catch-all. It's a catch-all name for all of their online services.
Some of their products aren't terrible.
I agree. Their notification system, iMessage seems to deliver its messages most of the time, I think.
I would argue that the API that gets the least credit is CloudKit, particularly because it now has a JavaScript hook in, which is actually very, very good. Having said that, if you want to be cross-platform, it is now possible to do it. It's just harder, assuming you use the JavaScript API. My question is why, of course, and for people who don't use iOS, the obvious way they would make money here is either you buy the app, which, let's be honest, is not super realistic, or if you're doing any kind of storage or anything that touches their services, they get a cut. So if you're having people store files in iCloud, the minimum iCloud that you get for free is extremely small. So like even my wife's iPhone, I had to buy her the second tier iCloud account because it's just you fill it right up in 2 seconds.
Basically after like a month of backups or something.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
It's gone in I think it was exactly a month. So sure they can make money that way, but don't you think, Chris, that maybe moving to a more automated process would let them not have to keep hiring people to review apps and maybe to save a ton of money in healthcare costs, payroll? That way, I mean, to me, this seems like a savings measure than anything else.
I guess it's a good story to get out there too.
I'm a developer. I'm very happy if this is actually the new world where it's 48 to 72 hours to get an app reviewed. That's a lot easier to kind of plan around, right? From a very practical point of view.
Boy, Apple is. But we don't really have to dwell on this point, but Apple is so screwed if all of the attention goes to how much they grow in services. They are so screwed because that is Google's bread and butter, Microsoft's bread and butter, Amazon's bread and butter. It's not Apple's.
If they went back and released an Xserve, people would buy it.
Yeah, but that's not services. That's hardware. They're not.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Okay.
See, I think they should make. I think that's part of their problem. I think that's maybe why they're so behind in services is because nobody uses their platform to actually serve anything.
A lot of companies are making a lot of money like hosting high-end Mac Minis as build machines for developers.
Yeah.
I've considered it multiple times, just like putting a Mac Mini either on our land or in a CDN somewhere. I'm sorry, not a CDN, what the hell, Colo. In a colo somewhere, just because having a stable build machine would be great. Why? I mean, I see a lot of people wanting to, who would probably consider using some sort of don't call me Azure Apple Cloud for that kind of purpose.
Maybe. I don't know. That's a tough. The competition is pretty fierce out there now.
Yeah, and Canonical's done so well at like embracing every new technology that's come out. Why would you not just run Ubuntu? Sorry, Red Hat. Ooh.
Oh, Mr. Dominic, it makes me reflect on the fact that Rails is now yesterday's software.
Yeah, I got the memo. Wow.
Yeah, I got it too. It's right here, posted on Medium, just in case nobody else saw it. Rails is done.
So this was posted by a fellow whose name I don't remember, but it's
Rob Robinson.
Thank you for putting that up there. So Rob is upset. Now, I actually agree. So he has some criticisms, right?
Okay.
Let's be fair to Rob.
All right.
A lot of his criticisms, and the only reason we're talking about some random Medium article is because this thing was trending on Hacker News. It was
Officially hoopla.
It was hoopla. It was actual hoopla. He has a couple arguments. Some of them I think are good. I think his best argument is that gems have this weird global space, and a lot of people don't look at what their gems do. Mm-hmm. And there's collisions there, and that causes all kinds of problems. Unfortunately, the counter argument to that is, well, that's the same as downloading an EXE or a DLLL and just going for it, right?
Actually, see, in my limited experience, this was something that actually confused me. Is it felt like I had to walk into a situation with a bit of presumptive knowledge about which would be the right gem to use or which is the right solution to use even for a particular problem. Like I felt there was not duplicate effort, but like slightly different options that gave me the same result.
In terms of the gem system.
Yes.
There are, but the problem is that sometimes they don't play nice together. He gives an example of simple form and devise, two very popular gems that don't.
Right. Literally my experience. And I thought my experience trying to learn it was that, this is something that I would overcome once I become an expert. I would just memorize all this stuff or something. Like it was tribal knowledge.
Use simple form and devise together. I mean, that would be, that's the answer, right? Like they're both really big. I mean, I don't like devise because I think it's too big and it does too many things. But yeah, I mean, they're both super big. I mean, part of the value in Rails, and I think we should probably just have this up front for people who aren't, in the Rails space, is you are giving up a lot of stuff. You're giving up a lot of freedom in how you do things. You're giving up performance because it's not that performant. In exchange, you're getting development time efficiency via active record and abstractions. Mm-hmm. In addition, via generators, otherwise known as scaffolding, right? So that is, as we go through his points here, keep in mind that if you are writing Rails new in your terminal, creating a new Rails application, you have or should have already accepted that compromise, right? So you're trading everything else for development efficiency. And I actually don't think it's that bad of a trade.
Okay.
So with a few caveats. He has another good point about CoffeeScript. Now, he is wrong in how CoffeeScript works.
Okay.
He thinks it goes through like 2 interpreters. It really doesn't.
Oh, okay.
But I would say that CoffeeScript, which is now the default JavaScript variant in Rails, is probably an unnecessary abstraction. And it actually makes it harder to work with other JavaScript libraries because every sample you're going to find is going to be in JavaScript.
What do you think, though, about his points regarding the roadmap for Rails being bleak? The asset pipe.
Okay. We're going to get there.
Okay.
Right. So again, you can do Rails new and send in a no CoffeeScript flag and get regular JavaScript and be happy. Active record. It's slow. Active record is the whole reason you're using Rails. It's so you don't have to write SQL queries. If you don't like active record, you probably don't like ORMs because, contrary to popular opinion, active record is one of the best, most mature ORMs on the freaking planet. So if you're criticizing active record from a position of ORMs are bad and inefficient, fine, then don't use one. If you're criticizing active record because active record is bad as an ORM, I'm just wondering what ORM do you think is better? Because I have never seen one that is more reliable or more consistent in the way it behaves. Bad code. Rails suffers from the PHP problem of, since it is very popular, since you can go on Craigslist and look for Rails contracts and Rails jobs, and since there are such a culture around Code School and Pluralsight and all those types of like learn Rails in 5 days boot camps, there are a ton of shitty developers out there doing Rails. And I don't mean that as an insult to them. I mean, they're just new, right? And they're copy pasting code from Stack Overflow and doing all this bad stuff, just like people do at PHP and have created a giant waste disposal system for PHP. So, is it really fair to say that Rails is on its face bad for what it's supposed to do? This is the other point I would probably want to make about this. If you really think you're going to be Twitter scale, then don't use Rails. Right? But if you're like the 99.99% of people I talk to who need a website or a web application, who are going to have maybe a couple hundred, internal corporate users, Rails is awesome because Rails allows you to get it done on their crazy low budget. I mean, really, that's what Rails is about. Rails is about development efficiency. I just don't understand. And apparently he is a maintainer of Active Record. So at least he likes Active Record. But I don't understand how this keeps happening, right? People keep saying, oh, well, it's not, so-and-so technology is bad because in this weird case of high performance and you need a ton of, and you have millions of active users at the same time, it falls down and it's hard to scale, which it is.
I think, too, people in the technical community are prone to arguing solely on the technical merits of something. And when something doesn't pass the sniff test, you start building a case against it because that's what it's an engineering-driven community in a sense.
Well, and to be fair, and this is the next point, there are things that are absolutely not good in Rails. The asset pipeline is a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely talks about that.
You can lose sleep. Yeah, so he's not completely wrong, right? And I actually think his post is good. I think, he even admits it if you read the comments that he just had a really bad long night because something broke. So probably not the best time to write a rant about something.
Yeah.
But, the asset pipeline in Rails is absolutely terrible. Trying to integrate something like Angular with Rails via a gem or Bootstrap via gem just feels wrong. I mean, it's very, very weird. And I don't, I would challenge anyone who thinks Rails is bad on its face to say, okay, well, what real world situation that is likely to happen to you, your client, or your employer will it fail for, right? So you kind of teased it. The future roadmap of Rails, which we've discussed previously on the show. Things be changing. Rails 5 is going to be taking a slightly different direction.
Okay.
One of the bigger things that I actually like, but I wonder if it's not the right choice for Rails, is it's bringing in the Rails API gem. The Rails API gem basically gets rid of all the scaffolding and generators, and there's no view generation, right? So if you think Rails is MVC, and this is a gross simplification, so don't write me hate mail, or do and send it to Alan. It's a gross simplification. It's cuts out the view layer. So no more generating views, no more serving views from the Rails server. You'd have a different Angular client or Bootstrap client or whatever JavaScript framework of the week you're using, or maybe a mobile app in Ionic, which is the right way to go. You would know. So does that make sense, Chris? You're not generating the HTML views via Rails.
That's a big change.
Okay. That is interesting, right? Because if you think about the things that are really weak in Rails, such as the asset pipeline, which you can tell I don't like the asset pipeline, you basically avoid that completely because you're not compiling your JavaScript or your CSS on Rails. You're doing it via some other web server, right? You're moving in a direction, and I wish I had the link in the doc. Some of the talk about Rails being omakase, kind of leading you in a direction for Rails 5. Yeah, I'm just going to bring it up. Go ahead, Chris.
So if I'm wrapping my head around this, and I'm not sure if I am because I've never this is not really an area I've ever really dug into. But what it sounds like things are sort of some of the work is breaking out, and in some sense, some of the work that was being done by Ruby is now being done by the web server. Is that am I following you correctly?
It's weird because actually you can go ahead and not do it that way still in Rails 5. You can have your generated views, you can have your scaffolding, you can have all your fun stuff. But there's definitely a desire to go more in that services direction of the API being the API, which, for my 2 cents, I actually think that's the right way to go. These big monolithic applications are probably not the greatest solution of all. I don't know if you're already going that far. Is Rails the solution you ought to still be using, or should you just find something else?
Is this to me just just to finish that last thought? As an outsider, to me, this honestly doesn't feel like a huge radical shift. It feels like it honestly feels like this is just how the community responds when there's new contenders out there that are getting a lot of attention, like Swift and Go and Rust.
Yeah, I mean, I put a link in the chat to the Rails doctrine that we talked about a few weeks ago. I mean, the Rails maintainers have come out with a pretty strong statement of where they want to go.
I see. So it's a Go-style API. Rails 5 is allowing you to build just a bare Go-style API instead of everything. Okay, that is a pretty huge shift, I guess.
It will so you can still do it, right? You can totally still have your generator views.
Okay.
And I don't know if I love calling it a Go-style API because, again, with Go, you're optimizing for performance.
So
for Rails, you're definitely not.
Yeah.
Which is, and this is something I'm struggling with too. If you're going to go in this direction, should you even be using Rails, right? Should you not be using something like Go or one of the more high-performant Java frameworks? Yes, I said Java and high performance. Or Scala. We've got to love Scala. I don't know, right? The problem I have with this post is he's right about a lot of things.
He says we're stuck in a voice of OOP and inheritance. And metadata programming that encourages lazy thinking and lazy software.
Oh, yeah, I mean, sure, right? Like some of the stuff Ruby lets you do, what is it? Monkey patching is terrible. I would also argue that you should not be allowed to have DSLs at all. Everybody should be. The DSL is a domain-specific language, right?
Node.js suffers the same exact problem. We need new thinking, not just repackaging of the same old failures. I should be spending my time writing code, not debugging a haystack of mutable, dependency-wired mess.
Right, but here's the problem. You don't need to import all of these extraneous gems, right? You don't need to use devise and simple. You don't need to do any of this. Now, I will give him, and I agree with it, the Rails view stuff is pretty rough, and it gets pretty gnarly and hard to maintain. But isn't there, I know Active Record is a DSL, isn't there I'm saying that you as the end user developer, isn't there a point where it's actually on the developer himself or herself to not write these bugs, right? I mean,
yes.
I mean, come on. I mean, you import a bunch of gems and you expect everything to work.
I just don't like the answer being, oh, you use the system to the way it's supposed to be used really well, and so now you've caused a problem. That just sucks as an answer. You're not, oh yeah, that feature that's like a core feature of the platform, yeah, you used it too much. Okay. It's like browser extensions. Like, oh yeah, you installed too many extensions, now your browser's crashing. Well, why the hell can I install extensions then?
I hear what you're saying, but in no other community, like
I know, you have to be everything in balance. You have to use it responsibly. I get that, and I am just giving you the devil's advocate. It is kind of a sucky response to say, oh yeah, that's a built-in feature of the platform. You just kind of overdid it a little bit. You need to kind of scale that back. That's
I would
okay.
almost argue that like some of the pain that I've had with Rails is. And this is exactly what Azer just said, the dynamic language aspect of it. All these unit tests you have to write, or should write, that most people don't, simply because you don't have a compiler smacking you in the face telling you did things wrong. A lot of these tests are just testing things a Java compiler would have seen, right? Like, oh, I sent a string to an integer. That's bad. Maybe it's not the best solution for every job. But again, I will still, I will die on this hill for a lot of low budget, need to get it done, need a simple web application. Rails is a great way to get it done, again, with that budget, when performance doesn't matter that much. Assuming
when you have a couple hundred users. When you have a few thousand, when it's not tens of thousands of tens of thousands.
That, right? This is the thing. People say Rails doesn't scale. It doesn't scale in the millions.
Yeah, okay. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Now,
well, I don't actually. I don't even know if that's fair in particular. I think in most people's most common.
It also costs more to host. I mean, that's the other side of it. You're definitely, you're not in the base DO plan at all.
Well,
Throw it out there.
probably not.
So there are compromises, but again,
Basecamp, there you go. There's a good. I mean, Basecamp isn't like humongous, but it's a big site.
GitHub is written in Rails
There you go.
with some help from other things.
Yeah.
This is the thing, right? Rails is, think about it as a good 1.0 framework. And if your project actually succeeds, yes, you will probably start going on the same path that many others have gone, such as, JRuby, and taking advantage of the JVM, which is awesome.
So all you're saying is all of those Ruby developers out there, all those Rails developers out there, you're just doing quick prototyping. Come talk to Mike when it's time for 2.0.
Which is weird because we almost exclusively ship Rails, but
Well, I actually don't see. It's actually I'm joking, but I still feel like you're downplaying a little bit. I don't even think it's your first prototype. I don't even think it's your first product. It could be your second or third or fourth product. If the market you're shipping for, the product is that Ruby on Rails works just fine. It could be your 10th version of it, and it's just fine as long as that's meeting the needs.
You know what it really is? It's Rails is good for what it was made for. It is not good to be the only web framework the only tool you ship anything in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very much the case.
That's it. I mean,
yeah.
Obviously Node is the wrong choice, no matter what you're doing, though.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
I like that. That was good. That was sort of Yoda level stuff there.
All right. So
yeah.
The hate mail, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com, because I know we're going to get a lot. Let's anger some other people, unless you have an ad read.
You know what? Why don't I? Why don't we ship you? Do you want to talk about anything else before we jump into I/O? Or are you ready to jump into I/O?
Let's leave it there.
Okay. All right. Well, then, yeah, I'll mention our friends over at Linux Academy. We're talking about Ruby on Rails, and we're talking about all these things. And Linux Academy has great courseware on all of it. The reason is unlike other online training sites that this type of stuff is just something they shoot for when they find the right person and they bring him in back in 2006 and they got a contract and they had him record some stuff. And hey, now we got Linux on the site and we can say we have Linux training and we have Android development training. And that's where it sits. Because it's not really their core focus. But that's all Linux Academy does is this stuff. They live this stuff. They breathe this stuff. And it's nice to see a well-funded startup that's organizing its staffs to keep its content relevant, keep it up to date, and constantly adding new stuff. 2,391 videos and self-paced courses where you can obtain real experience. Practice on lab servers. And one of my favorite features is their distro selector. Go in there. Say which distro. Say you want to run Debian, maybe you're learning Red Hat. You choose that distribution. All of the courseware adjusts to that, but also the virtual servers. They match it too. You get to SSH in. It's really sweet. And you SSH in maybe to like one of their scenario-based labs. They've spun these servers up for you on demand. You get in there. You're doing real-world scenario stuff, getting good feedback. It's a great way for those of us who have test anxiety to sort of push through that. linuxacademy.com/coders. Go there to get our discount. Check out the graded server exercises. They have great courseware on the entire Linux stack. Like we mentioned, Ruby. They have OpenStack, Python. Now, if you're ready to just say hell with it all, just hell with it. Just forget about it. And you just want to go PHP to make Mike happy. They got great courseware on that. Oh, also those Amazon Web Services. They're like their own breed of technology, and they're blowing it out with that courseware. People are getting certified like crazy. Go over there and check them out at linuxacademy.com/coders. Community stacked full of Jupiter Broadcasting members, and they're adding stuff all the time. The membership is a super good value. linuxacademy.com/coders. All right, so on Wednesday, Google I/O 2016 kicks off. And I like it better when they do it on a Monday because then we can just live stream it with everybody. But unfortunately, they put it on a Wednesday this week. And I think the big thing that I'm looking forward to is going to be virtual reality. I'm hoping that Google takes these $700, $800 setups plus PC and puts it in something usable right away. They've made so much progress with Cardboard. And the real nice experience with VR, like the first thing you think of is, I want a holodeck. But to be real with you, no, it's not there for that. But what it is there for is kick-ass movies, TV, and content sharing. It's stuff that your smartphone can render. And I didn't think this was the case until I had a Gear VR for a while. And on an S6, I was able to have a very, very enjoyable VR experience. And the key thing about it was, A, it was shareable because the device didn't have 8 cables running off of it and attached to a PC. And also, I think very important, it was simple and flexible enough that if on a whim I just wanted to slap this phone into a silly-looking helmet, Bob's your uncle, now we're doing VR. Take it with me in the car for a long car ride if I'm in the passenger seat and I want to watch a movie or something like that. Boom, no problem. It is a great VR experience, and VR doesn't have to be like crisis-level graphics where you've got all these different motion controllers and monitors. It can be something that you just use to enjoy some content. So I think I hope VR is going to be huge at I.O. What do you think, Mike? I think it's going to be big I.O. I'm excited. Are you fired up?
Yeah, I think it'll be fine.
Oh, you're not excited about Android N or virtual reality coming down the pipe?
The whole VR thing, I'm just not that into.
That's what I said until I tried it.
Or maybe I've tried it, but I've tried like the make it yourself Google.
Yeah, they need a nice product around that. Something you can just buy and snap in. You know what I watched just last night that I would actually love to use Google VR for? I don't even know how, but the AccuWeather app, AccuWeather, somehow they they make enough money that they've got like a video site where they publish video and like news and all this kind of stuff. And on there they have a 360-degree storm chasers chase of this monstrous tornado in Colorado. Monster. And just to be in that, and just on YouTube and on my web browser to be able to scroll around in this 360-degree experience was amazing. But the first thing I thought is, geez, I wish I had the Gear VR. This.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was just on YouTube. It was really simple. It'd be really easy to do on a phone. And the other thing about VR is you add headphones and it really completes the experience. Again, that's a lot easier to do on something like a Gear VR than with the Oculus or the Vive. Well, not really. I guess they build into the headset, but so all right. So you're not excited about what about N? Give me something for N. Any love for N?
Not a ton of love for N. Honestly, the thing I'm hoping for is some better progress on Android Wear.
Oh, okay.
And maybe some deeper developer access into Android Auto.
Sure, yeah, definitely there. I feel like Android Auto isn't even really a product yet.
I feel like Android Auto has been kind of shoved in the closet somewhere.
I've seen it a couple of times, but I'm just not impressed.
I'm hoping we get an Android Studio update because mine keeps freezing.
Oh, I just to go back to Wear for a second. I'm happy to say I'm revisiting Android Wear after a long vacation. I gave Noah my Nexus 5 and my LG Watch R for a while.
Right.
And he brought them back at Linux Fest. And so in that time, the Watch R has received a couple of updates that have boosted its battery to 2 days and enabled its Wi-Fi chip finally. I bought it because it had one, but the software didn't support it. And so it's able to, which might explain some of the battery life improvements because it's not using Bluetooth and constantly trying to make that connection work. The apps are pretty good. They are. They're. So I've looked at.
I
think Wear is in a better state than I thought it would be at this point.
Oh yeah, Wear is in good shape, especially from a development perspective. WatchKit. It's funny because Wear is so much better to develop for than WatchKit. You have much better access to the system, a lot more functional APIs that do interesting things.
Yeah, I've noticed the apps are way better, like just in terms of functionality and what they can do versus what the Apple Watch apps can do.
WatchKit is very restricted by policy. Although, there's a couple things I'd probably like to see. Like I have the first gen Moto 360 and if I don't have my device on me, it doesn't work. It doesn't have enough battery life. And why can't my Android watch turn me into a Power Ranger, Chris?
Also the expectation's a little lower when these Android watches are cheaper than the Apple Watch.
They're going to be cheaper, but I'm making a joke about, anime.
Transform.
I think the problem with WatchKit and Android Wear is that they're so constrained by battery life and having to be tethered to the phone, which you mentioned it, Bluetooth connection is incredibly costly.
And
other thing-
limited. I go in the other room sometimes and it drops.
Right. I mean, the first gen 360. I don't know how your experience has been. I leave the room. I have no connection.
Yeah, the watch hour is a little better, but now that I'm on Wi-Fi, it's no problem at all. In fact, now I can walk around outside, just not too far from my premises, and
I would also love like greater integration with Google Now, so I could like talk to my watch and be like, hey, anything I would do in Google Now.
There's a lot. You can do such and such, Book of Knowledge, and then say what you want to say on the watch, right? You can do that on the 360. You don't have G on your watch?
Well, I've reprogrammed mine to say "Salam Google," but
so on mine, like when I wake it up, it says say, "Okay, Salam," and then
hang on. Oh, it's dead.
So I find that to be pretty good now that I'm on Wi-Fi. So what I discovered was the big limiter there is the speech recognition, of course, has to talk to the Google servers. So if you're on Wi-Fi, that works a lot better than over Bluetooth because it just talks directly to Google servers from your watch. So the Wi-Fi it makes all the difference for me.
Yeah, I feel like the watches actually need their own connection.
Can I give you my secret? I was gonna make this a whole thing.
What's your secret?
Oh, hi there. That was literally my watch hitting the microphone. Ironic. So here's why I'm kind of bullish on. Is that the right? Yeah, I'm bullish on Wear because I've made a huge change and it is making my life a lot better. And
You finally come out of the closet.
if Wear did not, so one of the big things I've hated about watches, all of these computer watches, is they give you your notifications. My God. When I'm at work, trust me, I don't need anything beeping. I mean, first of all, I don't want a distraction. The cost of distractions is too high. But second of all,
It beeps in like 5 places.
Yes. And so I had a sea change of mindset that has changed my life for the better. I realized that instead of having Wear be part of the chorus, and the reason why I think it took me a little bit to get there is because I'm so damn lazy that I didn't want to have to do this next step. But you know what I did, Mike? I frickin' went around to every single device, everything except for my phone, and I turned off notifications. No desktop notifications, no ding-a-lings, nothing. And then in the Android Wear app, I turned on the option that says when the Wear device is connected, mute all notifications on the phone. No vibe on the phone, no blippity bleeps on the phone. If Wear is connected, send it to the watch. So now if I get a notification like for Telegram, and even if I'm going to reply on my desktop, I get the notification on the watch. And everything, and then if I don't want any notifications, I just take the watch off. And I walk away. It has made the watch the best thing ever. A, I got only one place to check and dismiss now. And B, I only got one thing that either beeps or buzzes at me, which is way better when I'm doing a show. Way, way better. So I love it. And for me, it's been a huge change. So I'm pretty excited about Wear again.
Are you tethering that to an iOS device or an Android device?
At the moment, it's on an Nexus device. I've never tried Wear with an iPhone. I don't know what that seems pointless. Because it seems like a lot of the functionality I get with Wear wouldn't be available with an internet phone. So I have been enjoying. I tried Android N for a bit on the Nexus 5 X and found it to be horribly laggy and too slow. So I'm back to Marshmallow. Yeah, so I'm hoping they have some announcements about speed improvements for N because my initial testing with N, I almost never roll back updates once I've gone forward because I just figure I'll just hang with it and until it works. But thankfully, they make it easy to opt out of the beta once you've gotten in, but I had to get out of that. So, all right, okay. Oh, there is one other prediction I've heard going around that I wanted to bounce off you. See, I'm looking forward to this. I think this is going to be a good I.O. I think they're going to have to come out with an Echo competitor because it's just so obvious with the Now service and the Googs.
There is one thing I want, but I'm not going to get. We lost him.
Oh, no, what is it? What is it? I was waiting. What is it?
Kotlin.
Kotlin?
The language. So it seems pretty clear to me that Google is going to have to move away from Java because they very obviously broke Sun's license, which I don't understand why no one else can see that, because they have emails where they say, hey, I think we need a license. Nah, bro, Sun ain't going to do shit to us. So they pushed around the little kid on the play yard, and then he got bought by the big kid who's going to take millions of dollars. I see a world where they move away from Java. Now, the whole Swift rumor, possible.
Yeah, come on.
It seems unlikely.
Yeah.
I think Kotlin makes a lot more sense. It already works. You can already do Android development in Kotlin. It is by a vendor that they already have a good relationship with called JetBrains, and it is purely open source, i.e. JetBrains cannot turn around and sue them. Why not just do that?
Yeah, this is exactly what they probably would do, huh? This seems genius.
It's a huge engineering effort. I mean, I understand that it's a pain in the ass, but you know, it's this is the biggest feature. Then I'm glad you brought up the page. Kotlin is interoperable with Java.
Yeah, that's
so
huge.
Just like Swift is interoperable with Objective C, kind of on iOS and macOS. You can totally make some Kotlin files and classes in your existing Android codebase. Yeah,
that's good. That's solid. Why don't you think they're going to do it?
Just the level of effort in actually doing that.
Maybe next year?
Honestly, I think they probably are working on this as a skunk's work, and they're kind of just waiting to see what the judge says, right?
I wonder, too, if maybe they would lay the groundwork this year.
I think the best we could get this year is some sort of official embracement of Kotlin, right?
That would make sense. Something that makes it a safe, on the Android platform, a favorable player, as it were. Something, what is it, like a gesture with the Play API? What do you think? What's something they could do? Give it a nod? It's got to be more than just like an acknowledgement up on stage, right?
Mean, what did Apple do to really show that Swift was here to stay? Do some of your samples in the developer sessions. Have Kotlin be there. Have some guys from JetBrains do a couple talks, right?
Yeah.
I am the biggest Java lover in the world because I'm old and lazy and don't want to learn new things. Though that has been changing. I could definitely see a reason to go to Kotlin. I could see several reasons to go to Kotlin. And Kotlin has a lot of the advantages that Swift has over Objective-C when compared to Java. I worry about the actual engineering effort to make that happen. Although maybe not, because Kotlin's already interoperable. It works on the JVM. You can already do development.
And I didn't even think about the fact that there is almost a competitive necessity from Google's perspective, perhaps, to respond to Swift.
So they're really getting hit from two sides here, right? One, Oracle. I mean, I understand that this is not a popular opinion here, but it's pretty obvious to me, and please read the emails, that they knew what they were doing, and because they knew it, they're going to get hammered, right? They knew that they needed a license from Sun. Whether you think they should have needed a license or whether you think that's not a good interpretation of copyright doesn't mean that, and Chris, I would be curious about your feelings on this. The fact that there's an email where they acknowledge that they need the license and want to avoid a legal problem, and they say that outright.
I don't remember that as clearly, but I do seem to recall that there was some for one-to-one copy and pasting going on too.
Yeah. Well, and there was a couple where they said don't mention Java for legal reasons. Right, and then there's one that says we need alternatives because there are potential legal issues.
Yeah, Azure points out the 6 files. That 6 files that copied outright is what rings a bell. It doesn't seem like an egregious move. It doesn't seem like, in the grand scheme of things, that big of a.
But the problem is,
transgression
are always decided on technicality, or often decided on technicality.
Yeah, right? Well, and intention. If they can, if Oracle can prove Google's intention, then
I mean. I've been following all the R's reporting on the trial. I wouldn't say that there's it's not a slam dunk that there was a cover up, but it definitely sounds like when you have, the president or the CEO of the company emailing engineers and saying, don't say Java, don't do all these things. It seems like there definitely was at least an awareness of the potential legal issue, right?
Yeah, I think Oracle. I think Oracle could end up. I mean, last week we were kind of poo-pooing the precedents that could be set, but The more I think about how many other times something like this has probably happened.
Yeah, I would also argue this is probably not that precedent-setting of a case. I
don't know.
I feel like this stuff has happened before. I don't think this is that new.
Yeah.
Well, how about Jay Sharp? Anybody remember that? Remember Sun sued them?
I was watching Twit last night, and Leo and friends were crapping their pants for like 25 minutes. I mean, they think it's an industry unraveling precedent that could be set.
Maybe. I don't believe that.
The anime says it's a fair use trial. I mean, that's a lot of pressure on one thing.
Think about this though. Even if I'm wrong and it is destructive to the industry, right? All Google had to do was go over to Sun, who by the way had no money, right? Sun was not in good shape, and give them some money. And Sun would have negotiated a friendly license, and maybe Sun would have made them say Android powered by Sun Micro or something like that, right? But this is not about fair use or copyright. This is about Google being fundamentally unwilling to pay for software.
I think what people at large are worried about is a non-technical jury and judge making decisions that will have, yeah, exactly.
To me, it's a pretty egregious case of Google wanted to pay exactly nothing, and that's what they paid. But anyway, back on topic, right?
I'm sure this will not be coming up at I/O on Wednesday. I don't think this will be coming up.
Well, I would like to see a slide in the keynote. So we're embracing Kotlin because, reasons. I would really encourage the audience to check out Kotlin as a great open source language.
You may be hearing more about it very soon.
Yeah. Let's take a little bet on this. But I think we should leave it for today.
All right, Dominic. All right.
Yeah. My I/O prediction is Kotlin. I'm actually gonna put it down in the red book. Kotlin.
I am going to watch with some level of interest, secretly rooting for that VR project. Maybe not so secretly. We'd like to hear your thoughts on today's episode. jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. You can find Coda Radio right there on the drop down to send us in your thoughts, or go to codaradio.reddit.com. Mr. Dominic, if you were going to send some people somewhere during the week to find more you, where would you send them?
I would send them to Buccaneer IO.
I love it. Follow me at Chris Elias and the network at Jupiter Signal. Our live time? Oh, I'm glad you asked. JupiterBroadcasting.com/calendar. You can join us at jblive.tv. We do this show live Mondays at noon Pacific. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of Coda Radio, and see you next week for 206.